Welcome to Fundraising Confessions, the truth behind the profession. The podcast produced by Jerry Consulting Group, where nonprofit leaders, fundraisers, and donors spill the tea on what really goes down behind the scenes of the fundraising world. I'm your host, Rochelle Jerry, founder of Jerry Consulting Group and a lifelong nonprofit champion. Today, we are joined by a special guest, Miss Milan Ball, who's a trailblazing fundraiser with a vibrant career spanning fashion, tech, and philanthropy. Armed with a BFA from FIT and an MA in Philanthropic Studies, she transitioned from fashion expert to social impact tech founder to empowering fellow diverse talent and entrepreneurs through fundraising. Recognized as a United Way emerging leader and Women in Innovation WIN 2024 mover and maker, Milan excels in bridging ecosystems, driving contributions, and fostering community. Now, as Director of Development and Philanthropic Partnerships at Given Compass, she continues to inspire and innovate in the nonprofit sector. So welcome. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all right. When life calls.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to do that over.
Are you sure? Because, Confessions of a Fundraiser, you're going to get
Right?
the donor call, I love the cold open.
Right, I'll get back to that donor in a minute. But first...
I think you're totally fine. I wouldn't want you to go through and read that all over again, but thank you.
Okay. Or try to edit it, right?
Maybe, but sometimes we gotta live life in the unedited. So
Oh my God! Right. Well, welcome. I am so glad to have you here today. Not only are you a very special friend and colleague, I am just enjoying getting to know you better and working with you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm always giggly and we're always laughing whether it's work related or something. So I'm glad to be here and, support you. And I'm excited for everything that's, on its way for you and is already happening. So
yeah. Thank you. Well, our title today is How Do We Educate the Non-Fundraising CEO Who Wants $100,000 in 12 months? And we know many CEOs believe raising $100,000 in a year is simply a matter of asking more people. So from your experience, and what misconceptions do non-fundraising CEOs often have about hitting that $100,000 target?
it's a big question. It's a big question. When you sent it over, I was like, wow, this is so. You know what I'm going to start with? I'm going to start with a story. So, when I was in a previous organization, I supported processing $1 million gift in my first 3 months at that organization, and I laugh about it because it was a blessing and it was also a curse. Because when you're able to bring in a resource and, that early on, the expectations are really high.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think even to take a step back, I wish I asked and will continue to ask more questions ahead of any role I'm taking or exploring, or even the consulting work, because I think level setting and managing expectations as early as possible prevents the chaos that can ensue.
Yes.
I think the statistic is it takes about 18 months to really process, cultivate a gift. And so I would start with that step first. And level setting, I think, And 100,000 too. So, I mean, it also depends on the organization that you're within and what it is you're inheriting. So the key questions to be asking early on are, how engaged is the board in fundraising? Are there enough prospects to understand and really tackle that goal? Some organizations might be able to do 100,000 in a 6-month timeline because you have enough warm leads or existing donors that you can nurture to grow existing gifts. All the research and stuff that's involved. And I think I feel really fortunate in giving Compass now because I'm able to have a pretty transparent dialogue and education with our team. We're a solid team of entrepreneurs, technologists. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, but we do have folks from all these different backgrounds. And so there is a lot of translation that has to happen on the fundraising side. And I try to do my best to kind of get us there.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, all of those are great points, right? With asking more questions and speaking to everyone and not just the CEO, right? But everyone involved from finance to your program people and making sure everyone understands what it takes to cultivate a fundraising goal like that, right? And it definitely doesn't happen in 12 months. Right. And how would you begin a conversation like that with a CEO that has no fundraising background, but is determined to reach such a target, and you kind of sort of have to debunk the myths, so how do you do that professionally?
So what I've found, and I think this translates to any sort of knowledge sharing learning, I'm a very visual person. I'm also neurodivergent. So personally, I love to see things in front of me. And so any opportunity that I have to share a resource with my team that's visual. So if it's mapping out what grants are going towards what projects, so you can see and connect the dots between what pieces are related to one another. In the context of, a fundraising or building out a campaign in a tight timeline, I start with, again, the visuals. And I think a gift range chart is one of the first things or exercises that can be done because it's really bringing in the statistics and answering a lot of those key questions in a very practical way. So, you can start out with the questions. Well, what is the largest historical gift that we've received? How many prospects do we have in our pipeline? How many folks are in, how many folks already made a gift? How many folks made a gift last year, but haven't made a gift this year? To kind of set ourselves up to understand what is the landscape and territory we're working with. And I think that kind of connects the dots for folks in the earliest stages of what's realistic. I don't know that unless you've worked with them before or have had, the credits work, whether it's trying to accumulate, CFRE or, master's program in early school or doing, AFP webinars, workshops to really know that those things exist. Because when I was sharing the range chart with my team, it was, for some folks, it was the first time they were ever seeing one. And that's kind of exciting to me. They get to kind of open up this world that, is deeper than just the ask. And also, I think it lets everyone just kind of rest and recognize when things are feasible and doable and what goals are realistic. That's exciting to see someone say, you have a goal that feels gargantuan and, a very tight timeline, and we can actually map out and say, yes, we can reach this, or no, we can't. Here are 3 other alternatives to make up for what it is we need to close. And honestly, I wouldn't be in this line of work if I couldn't take rejection. So I've learned the art of saying no and just being really pragmatic. And I am so lucky. I always say I work with some of the best. I would rather have a difficult job working with some of the best people, and I definitely do. I love my job, and it's also hard. And also I work with incredible people. So they're receptive to that information. Now, if there's a fundraiser that's just doesn't have the same conditions, that's another conversation. have.
Yeah, for sure. I know I like talking about the concepts or introducing concepts to people to emphasize the strategies, right? So are there any core concepts that you like to start off with or introduce to the organization, or every CEO should know before understanding what a fundraising plan or goal should look like? So whether it's, major gifts or stewardship, what are some of your favorite core concepts?
Now, I don't know if I refer to them as signature in my own
Yeah.
practice, because I don't feel that I've been fundraising long enough to call something signature, but I love and lead with the relationship component. And I know that's just so simple, but for whatever reason, I think for folks outside of the fundraising space, it's really hard to make that connection that you need to have a solid foundation relationship with someone.
Mhm.
Most folks, before you can make an ask, and even in the open call framework, like
Mhm.
that is something that I never take for granted. If there is an open call, if there is, a grant opportunity that's available, just hitting submit is not enough for me. I
Right.
have to reach out to someone at that team if there's enough time, even if we're approaching a deadline and I know I'm not going to meet with that program officer before the deadline, I still want to be on their calendar during that review phase.
Yeah.
I want to cultivate, because I think at the end of the day, also, not every opportunity is a good opportunity, and we want what fits, and forcing our organization to be a good fit for a funding opportunity is never a good idea. And I would
Mhm.
rather have the language, knowledge, relationship with that program officer to know maybe their priorities will change. Maybe their reporting and outcomes and expectations will shift in a year and we're a better fit. But it's never, it feels like
Yeah.
a lot less loss if I've at least made that connection with someone and we don't get the gift and have the opportunity to build a relationship and maybe get it the following year.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Right. So I know I like to say often that, fundraisers are relationship builders, and then also having the opportunity to ask for feedback, and be comfortable with whatever that feedback is. Right. And I know we've been talking about like the timeline or like, $100,000 target, but what would you suggest to shift that timeline? Right. We can talk to your CEO and your colleagues at work that insist on because they're working on a budget, right? And it's, they're on a fiscal year and they're trying to understand, that revenue, those expenses, how do you get them to shift that understanding of 18 months cultivation and, analyzation, and that we're collecting this data to understand what that target could be. So how do you have those strategic conversations on the timeline?
I wrestle with answering some of these questions because I have a really great relationship with my CEO. So we're tag teaming on calls,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
hands-on and present in the process. And so I know that I'm spoiled as a
Yeah.
fundraiser to have that. And the same with the engagement we get with our board. Like I have a
Mhm.
weekly call with one of our board members who's also incredible. And just so we have
Mhm.
a very high level engagement. So again, I preface this by saying I'm
Yeah.
spoiled. This is not normal. and and when I think back to previous positions and just other
Yeah.
experiences, like I would have told myself then, or what I would have loved to have known then.
Mhm.
Two conditions. One, some people are not open to shifting, and
Mhm.
that's one reality. The other
Mhm.
reality, when they are open to shifting or can be slightly nudged, I
Yeah.
really think bringing it back to I really think bringing it back to just the principle of meeting people where they're at, because I've had previous employers who we're receptive to certain aspects of the traditional fundraising process and not others. And I think there were ways that I probably could have engaged them or maybe moved the needle a little bit towards some progression if I met them where they were at in a more meaningful way. And I know I'm being vague. I just don't want to get into the weeds. But I think if you are working with a CEO that's someone that is more analytical and is numbers driven, I think leading with that. So things like leveraging the tools like your gift range chart to really work through what's feasible and digestible. If they are more, if they're more, every CEO should be oriented, but if they're more mission, storytelling, narrative focused, I think bringing in those details as to why, the why and explanation behind the process and the flow and kind of connecting the dots for them. I also think, again, I'm a big research person, so I would also go as far as to just present as many facts as I can on the culture of the organizations in our ecosystem, because also not every community that you're fundraising within. Giving Compass is a national organization, so we're talking organizations all over the country. In the organizations previously, it was more of a local context, and so that was a different ecosystem that had nuances and very those foundations had very characteristic processes, approaches to grant making that on paper, when you can kind of explain those things, it makes it easier for them to understand, there's 2 times a year that we should be building towards, knowing that we can solicit for a gift, or making the ask, or understanding the grant cycle period, and knowing that, even just getting to the point of knowing the size of the budget, because some organizations are very buttoned up. And I'm speaking in terms of a grant writing cycle, because that's mostly what I've interfaced with. As far as like the major donor piece, sometimes I think you just got to bring it back to, would you generally wouldn't let someone minister to you without having a relationship with them.
Right.
Right. You're not going to, you're not going to want to ask someone for money that you have no relationship with.
Right. Yeah. And what is it? Right. And what is it we learned from the Lilly School of Philanthropy at the fundraising school is we have to identify linkage, ability, and interest. Yeah. Right. So it all goes back to your ability as a fundraiser to gather the information, analyze it, and dissect it and distribute it and segment it, right? So to understand your strategies. And so when we think about our new fundraisers to the industry, how do you explain the importance of knowing like when to say no, like if they find themselves in a situation that's unrealistic at their fundraising position, especially when we think about like this current landscape, where funding is shifting. How can we encourage some new fundraisers in that space?
When to say no in just the, the setting goals phase, or in the I think so. Where my mind first went was having a gift acceptance agreement to know, on when to say no to one type of gift, but. And I say that laughing because recently there was a crypto inquiry, and I'm like, I don't know if we're there yet. But, I think it's, again, I think it's policy oriented. I think it's putting things on paper and helping people visualize and understand and meeting them where they're at. But so on the linkage, interest, and ability, I actually have a slide that we use internally to kind of guide like the yes to who is a real prospect. That is an entire portion of the work that I think is really important. Not everyone is a prospect. And when you whittle down who's real and who's not, I think it helps people understand the more realistic framing for things. And I'll give a more candid example with Giving Compass. We are a technology platform, and so we have different metrics from the tech and the product side of things versus the more programmatic side of things. So we have all of this research and data that donors are able to go into the platform and learn about these 20 issue areas. So there's metrics on that side for, how are folks learning? How much time are they spending? But then on the, platform side of things, a lot of our historical tracking has been around platform users. Platform users are coming to Giving Compass to find good causes, grassroots organizations in their communities, find a place to volunteer. They're generally going to us to find something else and find another cause to support. So the caveat and challenge, I guess, with our fundraising is that we're generally more of appealing to the infrastructure funders and folks that are really trying to uplift philanthropy collectively and systemic growth, change, advancement. We don't really want to try to solicit from folks that we know we're pointing to grassroots organizations. And so our platform users, not all of them are prospects. And that was a conversation we had to have and kind of break down. And some of those folks that get a lot of value out of the platform might be prospects because, they've, again, gained that value, that trust, and want to support our work at a higher level. But generally, they're going to find another nonprofit, and that's okay. We want them to do that. So, breaking down those realities, because we had, over 2 million users last year. Not all 2 million are prospects to support our work, and so we would be doing ourselves a disservice to base our numbers off of the wrong data.
Yeah, and it's okay to say no, right, and move on to the next. To the next strategy. And still thinking about our emerging fundraisers, it made me think about tools and skill set. And I think a lot of emerging fundraisers kind of undervalue their skill set. Any language or tools that you can suggest that can help someone articulate their worth, for their position or their job, help them out.
Okay, skills, tools. This is going to be so cliche. I genuinely find that being in community with other fundraisers has been the greatest antidote for my own, finding my own self-worth and advocating for myself, because you genuinely just don't know. You really don't know what's possible. I mean, being in fellowship with you and the AFP community and, other folks, I've learned so much from other fundraisers that I don't know if there's one perfect tool outside of just networks and getting involved in networks that have made a difference for me personally. Other things I do use on a day-to-day basis to just stay ahead of the game. I am waist deep in AI. So we have an AI data. We have a data charter. So we have have organizational standards and whatnot. But it's very much championed in our organization. We have an AI powered platform, so of course it would be. But that has helped me just think a bit creatively, move at a faster pace, really manage expectations as well, because I think so often when you're in a strategic planning or designing or building programs or conceptualizing what a project or a grant might be, I like using AI to essentially do a lot of the framing for things. I think it helps because if I have the concept, the idea, and I can just have you build out, how can I teach this or share this with my team? Those things are very helpful to me personally. I think it translates to being very organized. And I do think people value that, as a peer and a colleague. That's just one example that I can think of right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's good. We could do a, shameless plug for our AFP African American Affinity Group to, join us for conversation, because Milan and I are your co-lead liaison
Oh no.
environment. Yeah. What
I
happened?
lost you for a second.
My little Wi-Fi thing just popped up. I've never seen that before on the software. So,
Okay.
um, so if so, emerging fundraiser working in a new environment that's being told you're not raising enough, right? What would we advise them to respond or consider, and their options, and how do we help them with some setting the stage advice?
For other fundraisers.
Other fundraisers, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to just sound like a broken be a broken clock, but or a broken record. Goodness, that anecdote's not working well. But I really do think going back to the drawing board with like the basics of the basics of knowledge sharing,
Yeah,
getting foundational principles of what is realistic, what do we have now, and I'm
yeah,
speaking in terms of just the donor base, like what is the pool that we're working
yeah,
with.
yeah.
If you're starting from ground zero, there are so many other questions that need to be asked about just from a governance and leadership perspective. How can the board help supplement and kickstart the work that you're doing with their networks?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
would be the first questions. If you're starting with a smaller pool of donors that haven't quite been cultivated, really start with a gratitude campaign. Like start with just thanking them, going back to folks that you may not have spoken to. I'm going through all these examples because I mean, there's no two organizations are the same. And so when you have folks that might be entering a new role, you just don't know what you're going to inherit. And
yeah,
I think it's really going to come down to the conditions that you're in. As much research as you possibly can on your organizational health, your donor base. I mean, even the just technology and infrastructure. Do you have the resources to cultivate the donor base you currently have? If you
right.
run that gratitude campaign, will you be able to adequately follow up with every donor in that full swoop? Will you need additional resources to do that?
That's right.
Things like, have you been collecting mailing addresses in your
Right.
checkout pages to be able to one day do a direct mail campaign? There's like
Mhm.
all these different pieces. So it's a wider question than I think we have time to fully answer, but I think it's just
Mhm.
there's investigative work. What is the core? What are the top three things that are
Yeah.
the challenges for the fundraising in general?
Mhm.
Iron them out, and yeah, I think there's just a lot of homework to be done
For
on this.
sure. For sure. And then, so when we also think about setting boundaries, at work with, next steps and red flags that we see in the development world, even if it causes you to move on, how do you, set those boundaries or move along gracefully? Do you maybe have a story or an example of maybe some place or someplace you maybe wanted to move forward or not?
We're getting into the confessions part.
We have to get into the confession.
This is the first confession to really make me shake the confessional. So I'm getting red. I'm getting red just thinking about it. So I've always been a writer. I love writing, like pre-AI. I actually enjoy grant writing. It's kind of nutty, but I love writing. I love storytelling. And at the same time, I can get lost in the work. And I will spend like just hours conceptualizing a grant. We pivoted to focus more on general operating support and not program-based fundraising just for capacity reasons and just needs. But the first thing that comes to mind, so in our grant writing process, that was the first thing that I really stood up workflows for at Giving Compass when we started, because those were where the vast existing relationships were for the organization. There were a lot of renewals that were happening. So I knew that process and the reporting and everything needed to be quickly established. In my organization prior to joining Giving Compass, we didn't have a boundary set for how many grants I would be attempting to write. And so I would be writing all the time. And when I got into this environment, I realized the best metric that I can set for myself is not necessarily the number of grants that are submitted, but we internally have a monthly goal of how much I will contribute to our pipeline to make sure that that's consistent month over month. So I know, for instance, I am going to submit X amount of dollars worth of grants. That might be 1, that might be 5 that are different, but it's the same number per month. And it helps me not only stay accountable to making sure that I'm doing it, because I am the primary grant writer at Giving Compass, but also that I'm not wearing myself out. And that if I can find another opportunity or cultivate an ongoing relationship, I know that I can close by a certain date. So that is a boundary that I set. I am not going to grant write beyond fulfilling this pipeline and really being intentional in nurturing it, on that monthly basis. Because we also don't know when or things will or won't come in, but I can commit to how much I will submit for. So
yeah, that's good. So when we think about resources or where you get your inspiration from, I heard you mention podcast and how you like to write. So any recommendations on some lighthearted or professional resources that you enjoy?
So again, I'm a total nerd. I love to read. It's an indulgence for me. And so every day I have these, actually in our company, we did a white elephant last year, and I got these light bulbs that turn colors and from one of my colleagues, and I love them. And so every time they turn on at night, I know it's reading time. And in the morning it's reading time. So I read for about an hour, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening, every day. And it is my safe thing. So I actually, and anytime I travel, unless it's like working hours, I am usually just reading the entire flight. So I just started a new era of philanthropy. Dimple Abidjadani. I'm liking this. To practice transform wealth into a more just and sustainable future. So this one, I'm about halfway through it. And that's a great one. I just finished Holly Lee's book. Oh my gosh, why is the name escaping me? But there's a trifecta for collective giving. And so the 3 of them. And Priya Daniel, that's the other book. Unrig the Game, that's hers. So those are 3. And I'll put, maybe, I don't know if you have notes, and I'll send the links to the book.
I put the takeaways and suggestions in the comments, so we'll put the book titles and names for reference, because that made me think about burnout and trauma is real in the fundraising space. So being aware, self-care, arming yourself with the tools and strategies and your community to help you be successful is key. So I will let you provide any takeaways or any call to action for anything you're working on or anything you have coming up, and I'll let you close us out.
Oh yeah, That would be great. The book was called The Big League, Holly Lee's book on just giving circles and generosity. So I'll send all three of those links. But yeah, I'm so grateful to know you. just cheer you on, and I mean, I know it's a podcast episode, but it just feels like we're having coffee. Like yeah. So I appreciate you, and as far as just the homework, Giving Compass, we're a donor education platform. It's completely free. Whether you're a donor or an advisor in the space, we welcome you to try our tool GG, our guide to good. You can ask me any questions on the philanthropic sector. It's been curated over the last 6-7 years, over 45,000 articles, resources. It can answer anything from help me find a nonprofit in my community to what is a DAF. So go test it out. We also have a Giving Styles quiz that we've launched. So gg.givingcompass.org/quiz. That is also in testing mode, and we're happy to get some feedback on that too. So thank you, Rochelle. That is my closeout.
Thank you. And thank you once again for joining us on Fundraising Confessions, the truth behind the profession.
Anytime.